Welcome back to Horn Takes, the best Texas football and baseball talk destination on the web. This is the Bullpen, the internet show all about Texas baseball. I am here tonight with Symm of OrangeBloods.com. You can find Zach over on X at Zach at the Dish right there on your screen. Find him on X for Texas baseball news and analysis. Zach does a great job. I just started following Zach maybe a couple weeks ago, and there's a lot of good stuff. If you like recruiting, Zach is always posting stuff about either current Texas signees or people that we should be looking at, people that the staff is looking at. So if you're interested in that at all, really good account to follow. I've got my friend Marc from Occupy Leftfield. You can find him on X at Occupy LF right there on your screen. He's the co-founder of Occupy Leftfield. If you have not heard of Occupy Leftfield, I don't know what to tell you. I've even heard of Occupy Leftfield. Go back a couple of episodes. I did an episode with Marc, and we talked all about Occupy Leftfield. Go check that out on the YouTube page. You can find him on X. Obviously, he supports Texas baseball. Him and his partner and a lot of their friends are big-time supporters of Texas baseball. And if you want to just find Marc, you got to go out to left field somewhere and find the beer and the food. He'll be the guy with all the beer, all the food before, during, and after the game, I'm told. And I'm going to test it this year sometime. How are we doing, guys?
Doing fantastic. Thanks for having us on tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for joining me on a Monday night. I am Sean Redfearn of the Horn Takes Podcast. You can find the Horn Takes Podcast on TikTok and Twitter and YouTube at Horn Takes. Go over there, give us a follow. We sure would appreciate it. Guys, it's officially baseball week. How are we feeling about that? We've been talking a little bit of baseball the last couple weeks. I know, Zach, you've been real into it that's what you do. And Marc, you love it, you live it. You're a baseball guy at heart, I can tell. How are we feeling about just a few more days until college baseball season?
Zach, you wanna kick us off?
Yeah, everything's going great. I'm glad football is finally done. The Super Bowl. Apparently that happened last night. I don't know. I did not watch it, but I saw things on Twitter about Chiefs fans crying and people getting booed. So yeah, thankfully it's baseball season. Best time of the year.
Absolutely, and I'm fired up, Sean. We're counting down the hours, man, until we can jump in the car, head up to Arlington this weekend. Seems like it's been a long wait. Thankfully, we did have Texas Longhorns football to hold us off a little bit further into January this year, but we're excited, man. There's going to be a great group of people up there in Arlington to watch the Horns this weekend, and we're ready to see them live. That's for sure.
Yeah, I might be one of them. I do this show with my wife on Sunday. We've done it the last 2 Sundays, called Day Drinking, because we just like to drink during the day. We're old. We like to be asleep by like 8 o'clock at night. So we day drink and we travel around and we go to Texas football games. We're fixing to start going to a lot of Texas baseball games now that our son is no longer playing ball. So it kind of freed us up to adopt the Longhorns, and they'll be our kids until probably we pass on or whatever. But before we get into baseball, we got to talk a little bit of Super Bowl. And Zach, I did not know you loathe football that badly, but we got to talk a little bit of this Super Bowl. Is anybody here surprised by the outcome? I feel like you got to be. Talk to us about that, Marc.
So I'm not necessarily surprised. I'm definitely bummed by the outcome. So I almost want to say unfortunately at this point, but I was raised a diehard Dallas Cowboys fan. So anytime I have to watch the Eagles do anything meaningful, it's really painful for me. So last night was about the worst outcome that I could have expected. It's one thing to watch your rival win the Super Bowl, but it's another thing to see them just absolutely dominate and look so damn good doing it. So I was hoping that Mahomes would beat him again and get another ring. But, man, I got to take my hat off to the Eagles. They were easily the better team. They deserve it. And, man, they played a hell of a game last night.
Yeah, they really did.
Game. I didn't see any complaining about the refs on the internet. So, did Mahomes run out of paychecks or what?
Yeah, I guess. It was funny, man. The game started off, and I think they called an offensive pass interference against the Eagles, I think, on the first drive. And it was pretty weak. I mean, it was pass interference, I think. I mean, by the rule, it's pass interference. But that play probably happens at least 5, 6, 7 times a game. And there's rarely, I mean, I would like to see the percentages of pass interferences that are defensive versus offensive. It's got to be way into the 90s for defensive. So it was, I was like, oh shit, here we go. And I was like checking Twitter. I was like, this is going to be funny. It's going to be because I didn't care either way. I'm not an NFL guy. My wife, huge Cowboys fan as well, Mark. And she, as a matter of fact, she did the show with me yesterday. She had a Dallas Cowboys jersey, one of those big giant necklace things with the Dallas Cowboys star thing. I mean, she was mourning the fact that the Eagles were even in the thing and that the Chiefs were in it. She doesn't like the Chiefs because we live in Lubbock. And if you don't know what that means, Lubbock has adopted the Chiefs as their professional football team because of Patrick Mahomes. So I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense, but it's pretty rough up here if you're a Cowboys fan. And yeah, man, just a country ass kicking is the only way you can describe that game. I mean, it was bad. I thought the Eagles had a chance to win that game if they could get the running game going. But really, and they never really did until later in the game. But the defense was just outstanding. I mean, they sacked Mahomes like 8 or 9 times in that game last night, and it was just bringing 4. They were bringing
their
4
front
guys.
4 was dominant. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely ridiculous. And then they got a couple of turnovers, and I think, and obviously you cash one of them in for a touchdown. If you can do that, I mean, I think it's really tough to win. I knew once it was like 17-0. This is not the Chiefs aren't coming back from this. They're not built like that. They're a close game team, and yeah, man, I was surprised by the score for sure, and just how pedestrian the Chiefs looked. I mean, the Eagles really, that was about as one-sided as the Super Bowl can get, I think. Some good news if you're a Texas Longhorn fan: Xavier Worthy becomes the first Texas Longhorn score a touchdown in a Super Bowl. I saw on Twitter yesterday that no Texas Longhorn had scored. And so I've kind of been like parroting that. And someone corrected me that they think Justin Tucker might have kicked a field goal because I believe he was in the league the last time Baltimore won the Super Bowl, 2012. So I think he kicked for us in 2011, right? Kicked the field goal against Aggie, but then I think he went to the NFL the next year. Are you clear on that, Mark?
Well, I could be wrong, but the stat that I saw was scored a touchdown. So
it was a touchdown. Yeah. Alabama got their first scored a touchdown, even though Bart Starr, but the Devonta Smith was the first person from Alabama to actually have scored a touchdown too, which is pretty wild if you think about it, considering the talent they've pumped out in recent years.
Absolutely.
Those two teams, yeah, to not have either of those schools have a touchdown was wild to me, because when I posted about Texas yesterday and that stat, somebody immediately said Bama hasn't either. And that almost shocked me more. You know, I was like, wow, both of those schools combined have not scored a Super Bowl touchdown. And then, of course, they both
pretty
get
nuts
in last night. So
yeah, pretty nuts stuff. So Xavier Worthy gets his second touchdown in that game, a really nice long ball. 150 plus yards for Worthy. I saw today, again, I can't confirm it, but I saw it. He's got the 5th highest receiving total in Super Bowl history now after playing one game. So that's pretty cool. You know, that you go from famine to feast. No touchdowns, you get 2, and you get moved up to 5th on the list for receiving yards in a Super Bowl. So congrats to Xavier Worthy. I mean, he hasn't done like that, I don't think, all season. I could be, I mean, I know he scored a few times, but I don't think he's kind of owned a game the way he owned that. I mean, he's the only guy on the Chiefs offense that showed up. Nobody else could catch. Mahomes couldn't throw it to anybody. The offensive line couldn't block. They couldn't do shit. It was pretty crazy. I was around, obviously, a bunch of tech people in the neighborhood. And so it was we left at halftime. I was like, I can't, this is like a funeral. I can't hang out with you guys anymore. Congrats to Moro Ajomo, a Philadelphia Eagle, for winning a Super Bowl, a Texas Longhorn guy there. So, so we'll wrap up the Super Bowl with that and head on into the Shriners Children's College Showdown this weekend over in Arlington. Got Louisville Friday night, Ole Miss Saturday night, and then number 7, Oklahoma State at 6:30 p.m. on Sunday. Initial thoughts as we head into this Shriners Showdown.
It's going to be interesting. Louisville was talking to Coach Sloss obviously this morning, but Louisville, they play a pretty solid brand of baseball. I haven't been to the regionals in 2 years. And so that's a program that, if you think about historically, they were in Omaha essentially every single year. So they're looking to get things back on track. Brought in a number of transfers, but they also lost some big names. A guy to Ole Miss, a guy to Tennessee. So it'll be interesting to see if they can finally kind of put together the pieces, both offensively and pitching wise, because defensively they're really strong. So I think it's, if you look at the three teams, I think that's the team you want if you're Texas to warm up on Friday. And then from what I understand from the Rebels folks, Texas is not going to have to face Hunter Elliott. He's going to go Friday night. So they'll get Maddox, their senior, on Saturday. So that's, if you look at matchup wise from a pitching standpoint, that's probably best case scenario for Texas as well. And then, I don't often check out men's forearms, but if you didn't see the picture of the guy from Oklahoma State on Twitter today in his arms, I mean, they're as big as my thighs.
I didn't. Is this who are we talking about here?
I'm pretty sure it's Nolan Schubert. It might have been Bruggeman or Schubert. It was one of the two, but yeah.
Schubert's the kid. Schubert was a freshman last year, right?
Nah, Schubert's going into his senior year now.
Okay. Yeah. Did he have a big breakout freshman year at Oklahoma State? Was he one of those guys that came in and just started, or maybe I'm just thinking of last year that he hit so well.
Last year was his big breakout year. Before that, he had kind of been a spot DH guy. Just all power. It was either strikeout or home run, but he really broke out last year. But that was the thing that everyone has said about Oklahoma State is they've got a top 3-4 offense in the nation. I mean, they're going to hit home runs. Every single one of their guys is capable of going deep, and so you could see them have 6, 7, 8 guys with double-digit home runs, but they have to replace their entire rotation. Gabe Davis is going to move up, but he'll probably go Friday night, if I had to guess. And so it'll be interesting to see what the pitching matchup between Texas and Oklahoma State is on Sunday. So,
yeah, it's gonna be fun, Sean. I'm really curious to see how fans travel to this event this weekend as well, because obviously you got some big name programs that all have pretty lengthy distance to travel, but I'm curious to see if we'll get a good amount of Ole Miss fans there, potentially some Clemson fans. I know they're playing in the tournament as well. We don't face them, but I'm excited to see some good competition. I mean, there's going to be some really, really quality teams there. And Zach, I'm really looking forward to that Oklahoma State game. It's kind of a bummer that that's on a Sunday night on a day that a lot of Texas fans are going to have to travel back home. But I expect the Cowboys to be fired up for that game. You take into account that, we left the conference. They're not going to get a chance to play us during the regular season. I'm guessing that they're going to be fired up to play Texas, much like Tech will be in a couple of weeks when we face them in Vegas. So I think it's going to be great competition. Zach, I watched your interview with Schloss today. A lot of great information in there, and I'm just really excited to see what our pitching staff's going to do, man. Very curious to see some of the new arms and how they're going to fare with the lights on, right? When we start playing for keeps. So it's going to be a fun weekend, just starting to see the new coaches and new players and how things come together. So definitely looking forward to it.
Yeah. And again, it's baseball. So I think all Texas baseball fans are ready for that. Just to have, I mean, I know it's on Flow Sports, and I got my Flow Sports subscription, but I told Diane the other day, I said, hey, you want to go to this thing? You want to just skip Valentine's Day and we'll drive to Arlington Friday afternoon and go watch some baseball a couple of days in a row? And she didn't completely throw it back in my face and say no. So there's a chance, man. We'll just kind of have to see how the week goes. I'm kind of watching tickets and stuff like that. I want to see what happens with some of that. But yeah, man, if we can get over there, that'll be great. We'll definitely come by and see you guys. Speaking of, Occupy Left Field, you're obviously going to be up there. Is there going to be any kind of formal Occupy Left Field activities going on game day? I mean, what do we got?
Absolutely.
Well, let's tell us about it.
Yeah. So the best thing about Globe Live, for people that haven't been there yet, it's a little bit of a different beast during football events, but that Texas Live venue that they have in the parking lot is pretty ridiculous. And it's a cool spot to hang out at when the crowds aren't overwhelming and crazy. So all of the baseball weekends that we've had in Arlington, that's always been our hangout spot. I mean, it's a baseball throw away from the entrance. It's literally like a 2-minute walk from the front door at Texas Live to the front door of Globe Live. So we'll be set up there. I'm expecting some good crowds there. We'll be publicizing and tweeting about location Friday and Saturday. Hoping that all the normal partners in crime are there. We're also, looking forward to seeing and meeting some of the new baseball families, some of the new players' dads, stuff like that. So we're trying to coordinate all of that. We want to welcome everybody over. And man, I'm really hoping that we have a good burn orange showing this weekend in Arlington.
So Texas Live, you're talking about the little bar area right there, kind of the little restaurant bar area that's right outside, like maybe the left field side of the stadium.
There's nothing little about it. It's one of the biggest bars I've ever seen. It's like 2 or 3 stories. There's like 5 different restaurants inside. So just depending on where you want to hang out. And I saw the forecast for Saturday is actually supposed to be pretty nice, like weather in the 70s. So they have a really, really big outdoor patio as well, where they usually have like big TVs out there. They'll probably be showing all the college basketball games and things like that. So yeah, that's where we'll be set up. But I think you're right. I think it is like left field side of the stadium and just right outside the front door. So
Occupy Left Field will be right outside the left field entrance.
It's appropriate, huh?
Live. Yeah, absolutely. You couldn't have planned that any better. So I heard you guys talking about some of the pitchers that we might face, might not face. Let's talk about our pitching staff as we head down there. Zach, I had you on. I know, Mark, I had you on a couple weeks ago. We've talked a little bit about who some of those pitchers might be. I think some names, and correct me if I'm wrong, Zach, some names you kind of threw out. Jared Spencer, more than likely, probably 100% going to be the Friday night guy. The transfer from Indiana State, he had 9 starts in 2024, 6-0 in those starts, 4.08 ERA in those or for the season. So not a bad season for Jared Spencer at all. Win rate up really high. And then you mentioned a guy like Luke Harrison might be the Saturday guy. Are you still pretty firm on Luke Harrison being our Saturday guy, at least for week 1?
Yeah, I think for week 1, you'll see Luke Harrison slot in there for the Saturday role. I mean, subject to change they still aren't going to announce until later this week when everyone's formalized. But
sure,
I think it makes sense from a seniority and experience level to have him roll out against Ole Miss. And then, honestly, wouldn't be surprised if it's a Cody Howard on Sunday, a guy that's, he's ramped up. He can go, longer innings and, he can eat some innings for you. So those are kind of the 3 guys that I have penciled in right now. But Sunday's really the big question mark is who's going to fill in that 3rd role.
Yeah, and I think the last time we talked, you mentioned Dylan Volandis was a guy that also has thrown some longer innings. Obviously, he went 3 innings in the alumni game, looked really, really good. And I looked up this kid's stats. This kid had a .33 ERA his senior year of high school, which is a county record where he lives there in California. And in his career, he had 200 Ks. That is a lot of strikeouts. So this kid, and we've seen him. I mean, obviously, he's got some good stuff. Luke Harrison, a guy, started 1 game last year. He went 1 2/3, got the win. I don't know how that works, but that's what the Longhorn website says.
Designated start.
Whatever. I don't see. This is where I'm not a baseball guy. This is where y'all are going to have to teach me stuff because I don't know all the rules in the statistics, how all that stuff works in baseball. So I'll say something incredibly stupid. Don't be afraid to go, man, Sean, that was really stupid. This is how this works, because that's how I'll learn. If you call me stupid enough, I'll be like, man, I got to get right on that. So, but yeah, so Luke Harrison got 1 start, got a win last year. Pretty hefty ERA, but we're not gonna worry about that. It's a new year, new coaching staff. So it'll be interesting to see. It sounds like Jared Spencer, Luke Harrison are for sure guys, and then maybe a guy like Dylan Volandis or maybe a guy like Cody Howard comes in with some experience and pitches on Sunday. What do you think about that rotation, Mark?
I'm excited to see it. I'm really excited to see Luke Harrison. I mean, obviously he was dealing with some injuries and missed most of last season. But man, his first year, at Texas, showed quite a bit of promise. So I'm really pulling for him, hoping to see him kind of slide back into a larger role, and him getting an opportunity to start on Saturday is going to be big. And obviously Spencer is kind of the big name that I'm really curious to see in person as well. His stats kind of speak for themselves, and obviously he's already garnering a lot of respect if Texas is penciling him in for Friday night. But I think some of the other names that I'm really interested to see are Moffitt, the LSU transfer. Haven't seen him a lot live, but I think it was you, Sean, who posted some highlights this morning. He came in later in the alumni game, and I'll admit at that point of the game I was kind of distracted. There were some old players out in left field. We kind of stopped paying attention and we're doing more drinking than watching baseball at that point. But I didn't realize he came in and had that many strikeouts. And the highlights that you showed, man, his stuff looked pretty filthy. So
it's
I'm looking
absolutely
forward
filthy.
to seeing him.
He's a guy, and again, I'm not a huge baseball guy, obviously, but he's a guy I'm really excited. I mean, that fastball just comes out of his hand. And there's other guys throwing what he's throwing velocity-wise, but I just feel like it gets there, and the hitter doesn't even know it's even out of his hand yet. Really great changeup, really nice slider that it doesn't – again, we talked about this last time, Zach. To me, it doesn't look like it just moves all that much, but it disappears from the hitter. These guys could not touch it on Saturday. And he only pitched against 3 hitters, but he struck all 3 of them out. And honestly, he looked physically better than 3 guys that are in professional baseball organizations. He just kind of blew them away, honestly.
Zach, who did he get? Who did he strike out?
I think Zubia was one of them.
Yeah, Zubia was one of them. He got Duke Ellis on a changeup, caught him looking, and then who was that right behind Duke Ellis? Zubia was the third. I can't remember who hit
Hamilton
right behind
or Faltini, one of the two, if I remember correctly.
It might have been Faltini because Ruger Riojas got Hamilton earlier in the game.
That's right.
Yeah. So
that's impressive stuff.
Both of those 2 guys, I am really excited about seeing in some action. I want to see. I want to see how all this works out, and when we start to get into SEC play, what Schloss has found out about all these pieces, and really how he's decided to fit them all together, and hopefully they can execute. That'll be the thing I think most Texas fans are looking for out of these pitchers. Is, to me, and this may be the non-baseball guy in me, but like I'd rather get beat giving up bombs because I'm throwing strikes and at least giving myself a chance than walking people around the bases and throwing the ball past my catcher. And you just make it real tough on yourself when you can't get people to either hit the ball or get the ball past them or let the defense play. Get them in play, let the defense play. So it'll be interesting to me if these guys can come in and just kind of execute some pitches. And then when the bad stuff does happen, because it will, somebody's going to get a hit on you, and it may be a big one. How do they come back from that and get back into the groove of execution? I think you looked at this pitching staff last year, and for the most part, they would start off pretty good. But then one guy would get on base, didn't matter how, and it just kind of went away. Like the mental side of the game got them right there, and they could not execute. Or somebody would get on base, they'd hit the ball really hard, and then we'd try to throw around people a lot, and you just can't do that. You got to throw the ball over the plate, or you're going to walk a lot of people. So I'm excited about that. Any insight? And one thing else about that list that I kind of had: Spencer, Harrison, Volantis, all 3 lefties. What's the significance of that for us non-baseball people?
Well, I don't think you're going to see Volantis start that 3rd game. I think
maybe not.
They're going to want to protect him and that arm to make sure that he can go the distance. And if anything, I think you'll see him come in spots, it's kind of longer relief, and let him kind of continue to ease into the game as a freshman, so that they can take full advantage of having a fresh arm, potentially as a starter as the season goes on. But if they do run 3 lefties or even 2 lefties and a righty, it forces a lot of coaches to shake up how they have their lineup, because more often than not, you got a right-hander leading off, and then a lot of the big power bats this year are all righties, and so it's changing who's protecting those guys. It's, breaking up that order. So lefties are always they're weird people. Southpaws are not natural. I don't care what anyone says. But yeah, it just puts more pressure on the opposing lineup.
Okay, so you're saying throwing the left-handed arms if you got them is just kind of can wreak a little havoc for the opposing coaching staff as they're trying to get the lineup set, and then hitters just don't get to see it as much, obviously. So it can look quite. I mean, I think for a right-handed hitter, most of the time you're facing a righty, the ball's moving away from them, and now all of a sudden the ball's coming into them. It's hard to see that difference, and I can get that as a non-baseball guy. Let's talk about the lineup. We talked about it a little bit with both of you guys over the last couple weeks. What we think that lineup's going to look like. I think, before the alumni game, I think a lot of people were kind of dead set on what at least the pieces were going to be. Maybe not the order, but the pieces. And then some things happened in that alumni game. A lot of guys had some good outings in that alumni game. Cole Chamberlain was one who went 2 for 3, hit a big 2-run home run. I don't know if you move somebody out because of one game, certainly not because of an alumni game. But what do we think we're going to see on Friday night in terms of lineup? And maybe is there any insight into the order of that lineup?
From the scrimmages I've seen, Kimball's been pretty steadily the leadoff guy. Depending on how they want to match up against opposing pitchers, does he stay there, right? But I think you're going to see Coach do something similar where he wants to put a balanced lineup. So right, left. They want to get speed guys on. I know that Coach Pierce always what he liked to do is he liked to have the speed guys on and then, have a big bopper after him or vice versa, just so that he can put more pressure. Coach Bloss didn't seem to be enamored and have any particular architecture in that sense, but they want to run more this year. So I wouldn't be surprised for an Easton or a Gaspo to be higher up, simply so they can get on base and get running. So, I mean, Baloo, once he's finally healthy and fully 100%, he's gonna be right in the heart of that order. You're gonna have Jalen right at the heart of the order as a 3 or worst case a 4. Ethan Mendoza, I think, is a guy that probably hits at the bottom of the lineup, and not because of his ability, but he's not a huge power guy. He's a numbers guy, and so that helps turn that line over and just keep it consistent. So that's always helpful. So I think that's what you probably need to start off with.
Yeah, and I think our lineup is going to be really solid from top to bottom. I think a lot of people are aware that Max is coming off of an illness. My understanding is that he's been cleared for the weekend coming up, but he hasn't been seeing much action in the last couple of weeks. So hopefully he'll be ready to go. But we may see a little bit of a different outfield for some parts this weekend. I wouldn't be surprised to see somebody like Tommy Farmer get a start in right field to give Max some rest if that's needed. But Zach, it seems to me, right, that if you take that illness out of the equation, I mean, most of the other positions seem pretty solid at this point. We know who's going to be, in the starting infield and who the 3 outfielders are going to be. Sean, you and I talked last time around that I think Borba is obviously going to be a big name that you're going to see rotated around, but it's going to be hard to keep him out of the lineup as well. So I think we'll see him at DH. I'm hoping he'll get some shots, at some spots in the field. He's got some experience playing third base, first base. So I'm guessing he'll get a couple of opportunities there. But, I heard Schlossnagel talk to Zach this morning, and, I like his philosophy of once I find my guys, those are my guys, right? And good, bad, or indifferent, we're not going to be switching the lineup up very often. And that kind of sucks for some of the guys on the bench who are looking for opportunities, right? But I like that Schloss understands once he has his crew, and we're going out there to win baseball games. So I'm hoping he sticks with the guys. I think one of the things that I always look at when a season gets started is, do guys press when they start a little slow, right? Because there's always that one guy or two who you're expecting to tear the cover off the ball, who start slow the first 2 weeks. And then it's does it start to get mental? Do they start trying too hard? Are they worried about getting replaced in the lineup? So I'm just glad we have our core guys now, and I'm hoping that they're able to work out the kinks and settle in the right places in the lineup, because I think there's going to be a lot of power there, and I'm really excited with what I've seen on the infield. I think Mendoza, Rodriguez, Flores are all going to be really solid defensively, and hopefully the pitching will trust them to play defense, and will limit walks, things of that nature, and really just let the defense do a lot of the heavy lifting for us.
Yeah, something you guys touched on was, once you have your guys, you have your guys, and me and Zach talked about that a little bit last time he was on the show, and I'm curious, why is that? As a non-baseball guy, why is it that a coach? I mean, why is it that a coach will keep running? And this is any coach. We're not talking Texas baseball right now. We're just talking baseball. You see it in the major leagues all the time. It doesn't matter how bad somebody is playing in the major leagues. I mean, they could be almost hitting nothing, 100, and that guy's going out there. He's the guy that's going out there. In pro baseball, there's probably some monetary things that cause you to have to do certain things. You've got a boss, you got a GM that's telling you, hey, you got to play this guy, paying him a lot of money. He's got to play. But just generally speaking, you see it a lot in high school. I mean, that's how it was at our son's high school. The guys were the guys, and there wasn't a lot of in and out. Why is that? Like, what's the philosophy behind that?
I mean, a lot of it goes back to the work these guys put in the offseason. They're playing a scrimmage a day. They're in the cages 24/7. And some of it's just effort. If you're showing the effort, if you're putting forth the effort, you're going to get some playing time. You're going to get some opportunities. Some of it is just the fact that you may have a cold snap, but they know that any moment you could change the game in one swing, or you could get on a tear, and all of a sudden you're looking at, oh my gosh, DC has 29 games in a row that he's gotten a hit. It wasn't that he was the most consistent guy all season long. He struggled early on, but he continued to grind. He stayed with his approach. He didn't start tweaking his mechanics. He didn't start getting out of himself. And all of a sudden you start stacking one after the other, and you build that confidence. The biggest thing that you see with Max Ballou, it wasn't his body, it wasn't his approach to the plate, but from year 1 to year 2, it was about his confidence, right? And he's a big confidence kid. And so when the coaching staff knows, okay, we have to make sure that his confidence stays at this level, because we know his confidence is going to match his output, as where he's just he plays very loose, right? He doesn't get real rigid, real uptight, but when he does, that's when he starts altering his mechanics a little bit. And so you get your guys you're comfortable with, that you trust, and that's what you stick with. So
that's fair.
Yeah. And Zach, I love your example of Dylan Campbell, right? And you guys know I'm really close with that family and with Dylan's dad, and we used to always laugh, man, that Dylan swings better when the weather gets warmer, and it seems like a couple years at Texas, man, he'd struggle out of the box, but you knew that at some point he was going to get going, and once he did, you better watch out, right? So I think you got to let guys like that heat up. And, you don't want a guy like Jalen Flores, if he starts slow, right? Why mess with him mentally? He's going to figure it out. He's going to start hitting. He shouldn't be worried about getting benched or going up there having a batted bat and getting taken out of the game. Like, that's not what you want to see. But at the same time, man, it seems like I can name some very recent examples of the opposite as well, where you have one guy on the bench who every time you give him a chance, he just plays so well that you can't keep him out of the lineup, right? Yeah. So it's a science, because you don't want to cut that off and prevent that from happening.
Right.
But at the same time, you don't want your stars pressing. And I think some of the recent examples, Zach and Sean, I can think about are like Murphy Stelly. When he came to UT, he couldn't get in the lineup, but every time they put him in there, whether it was at second base, left field, it didn't matter where, he was going 2 for 4 with a home run and a double, right? Every time he was put in the lineup. And same thing with Peyton Powell. He barely got any opportunities his first year or two at UT, but it seemed like every time he got a spot start, he'd hit 2 home runs and drive in 4 runs, right? So you have to give your guys on the bench, you got to make them feel like they're going to have an opportunity. But at the same time, right, not all of them are going to get an opportunity. There's going to be 2 or 3 guys up there that are fighting for starting positions. But other than that, man, you just let your guys go. You trust that you have your starting nine and you roll with it. So
Yeah, it's an interesting problem to have as a baseball coach. You can only play 9, and you don't have a lot of guys. It's just different than football. In football, you can run a bunch of people in and out multiple times during the game, and it's kind of a different flow. But I liked something y'all touched on is the mental part of it, and I think that's probably why baseball is so much different than other sports in that regard. Baseball players live off of confidence, or they live off of not being confident. Like, if they're not confident, they're not playing well. If they're confident, they're playing well. And I don't know. I think I was talking to Chuck. I was talking to Chuck Ertley, guy off the 1984-85 teams that went to the College World Series finals. I was talking to him a few weeks ago, and we just came to the conclusion that baseball players are just different in the mind. There's kind of like this swagger you have to be a good ball player. A lot of people see it as arrogance, but it's just I have to be mentally in this state to go through all I got to go through mentally during a baseball game. You think about it. We've talked about the plays before. These guys, they'll make 100 plays in a row and miss one that everybody thinks is easy because you usually make it look easy, but it's not easy. It's never easy. And you got to figure out a way to flush that, especially if you've done it in a situation that, you might have hurt your team or something like that. It's a really tough game. I don't think most people realize that, skill wise and mentally. And I think that's why coaches probably look at 9 guys and say, these are my 9 guys. Cause I feel like these are my 9 most mentally stable, like not mentally stable, but my rock, so to speak. They're my guys that if they are struggling, I know they're going to do the right things to get out of that and keep going. And as soon as you started talking about that, Dylan Campbell popped into my head because, again, as a non-baseball guy, Dylan Campbell was like the strangest thing to me I've ever seen. How at the beginning of the season he couldn't touch a baseball with the bat, like couldn't do it. But then at the end of the year, when it really matters, Dylan Campbell's banging the ball all over the place. So yeah, really interesting that kind of all 3 of us thought Dylan Campbell because he's the poster boy for leave them out there. If you know they're good, leave them out there.
If you look at baseball, it's a game of failure, right? Like, it's
Sure.
always been that way. And how you handle that failure, and you have to be accepting that you're going to fail, whether it's multiple at bats in one game or a week, right? Like, it's going to come. And that's where you always have to have a good mix. Like any coach you talk to in college sports, yes, they want the number 1 draft pick every single time. But if you think about it, that's not how it works, right? You want a bunch of guys that are dirtbags, the guys that will grind every single day and every single night. And then you mix in a couple of really high talented kids, and that's a recipe for success. Just like the teams like Coastal. Wow, how did they get there? Well, they were a bunch of senior guys that were just dirtbags and grinded their way through. And sometimes you can out talent a school, but most of the times with a parity these days, you can't. You have to guys that are willing to put in the work. And you look at the off season, you go to watch a scrimmage and you see who out there. DC and Hodo are practicing running bases. Like, they don't need to be practicing running bases. They can do all kinds of stuff. But you know what? They follow the regimen. That's what they're putting in the work, and that's what you got to do to be successful. So.
And another funny thing for me, right, is we talk about the game being a game of failure, is just also you got to factor in how superstitious some baseball players are as well, man, and that just takes it to another level. And I got a really funny story that I want to tell real quickly. So this goes back to Max Ballou, and some of you are aware that I've got a little NIL deal with him this year where my daughter's picking out his walk-up song for the upcoming season. And while we were like negotiating all of that, it actually occurred to me, as I was getting ready to call him one night, I was like, what if we pick his walk-up song and he sucks? Like, I don't want to be blamed for like our All-American being in a hitting slump. Everybody's going to be like, oh, well, y'all pick his walk-up song. That's why. So I even told him, I'm like, hey, man, what are we going to do if you start this season off slow? And it was very interesting to see that he is not superstitious at all. He's like, I don't care what my walk up song is, I'm gonna hit. So I
Nice.
kind of love that attitude as well. So there's just a whole lot of unique cats in the game of baseball, man, and it's funny to see how different they can all be.
Yeah, I believe it's Dua Lipa that's going on. Is that correct?
For the first month, I told you, man, I am still worried about the early season slump, even though he isn't. So we
Yeah.
broke it up by the month. So that's
Okay.
his walk-up song, at least for February.
All
And I
right.
said, if it works out well, we'll keep it going. I was like, if it doesn't work out, we'll switch the song in March. So we're gonna do some trial and error and see what goes on. But hopefully he'll start hot from the beginning and we won't have to switch it up. But it is Dua Lipa, so looking forward to
Nice.
that.
Which one? Which Dua Lipa song?
Levitating. Yeah.
Nice.
Not
Nice.
sure if you're familiar with that song, but
Dude,
it's one of my favorites. I love it.
I'm gonna embarrass the shit out of myself real quick for everybody that's listening right now. We have a pool. We love to swim. We go out. I mean, I'm talking Saturday morning when it's summertime till Sunday dark. My ass is in the pool. I'm having a good time. I got speakers out there and I'm listening to music. I cannot get enough of Pandora's Lady Gaga station, and
There you
it's
go.
mainly because Dua Lipa's on there. I don't know what I mean. I don't have like this. I'm not in love with Dua Lipa. I know a lot of guys. You know, she's a attractive lady. I know a lot of guys are all about that. Her music, just I don't know. I'm living my best life when I got a big cup of drink and some Dua Lipa songs going. So yeah, so there's my embarrassing story. Yours wasn't
There's nothing
embarrassing.
embarrassing about that, man. We could be really good friends now that I know that about you.
Man, I'll bring my trunks anytime I come to Austin. If you ever come to Lubbock, bring your trunks, man. We'll do it. We'll do it up right. Let's get back on track here. 2025 team ceiling. I talked to you about this last week, Zach, and you said you thought the pieces might be there for a super regional type deal, but you thought for sure it seemed like this team could punch its way into the tournament, maybe have a showing in a regional. Best case scenario, probably though, we're gonna get into the super regionals if everything just kind of falls in line. I think a lot of that, from your perspective, Zach, was we just don't know a lot about the pitching, and I think that's fair. 52% of the innings are what we've got back from last year, so there's a lot of new faces. I think I'll go ahead and go on record again as not a baseball guy, and just based off of what I've seen already, I'm really excited. I think we might have upgraded a lot of arms. I think we might be a little more physical this year than we were last year. We'll find out here pretty quick. Let's talk about this 2025 team ceiling, though. I did a poll up on Twitter, and Twitter polls are not exact science, folks. But I said I asked, what is the ceiling for this 2025 baseball team? And I got regional, super regionals, Omaha, and we won't make the tournament. And I shouldn't be as shocked, but I know people. Maybe I should put answer seriously. But Omaha is hard, even when you're good. We've seen that. So to have almost 71% say we're going to Omaha this year is kind of crazy to me. But I think, and I was talking to Zach before you got in here earlier, Mark. What's really crazy to me is 7.3% say we won't make the tournament, which is more than the 5.5% that say we'll make the regionals only. So kind of an odd breakdown here. And again, I know it's not exact science, and some people don't. I think a lot of people answer with, "Oh, it's Omaha or bust for Texas," which I get, and we'll talk about that in a minute too. But it just kind of personifies this Texas fan base. You interviewed Schloss this Monday, and you're going to be doing it every Monday, Zach. Does he understand what he's up against with this fan base? Does he get like? I mean, I'm sure I know he understands the tradition. I know he understands how many times Texas has been to Omaha. 38 times. No other team's even close. Like, does he get how crazy Texas Longhorns baseball fans are?
I think, I think he understands. I mean, he keeps joking about it, but I was in his office a couple weeks ago, and first thing he did is he looks over his shoulder and goes, "Yeah, I got to look at these two jokers every day, and it's Bibb and Dishfall, or it's Dishfall."
Yeah,
he's like, I got some uncomfortable people staring at me all the time, and every single one of them has won a national title. You look, Pierce is the only one that hasn't won one in his tenure, basically. But I think he understands that there's a real passion for baseball at Texas. It's, outside of football, because it's what it is at Texas. Baseball is not just the second sport, but it is the second sport by a very wide margin from a support, from a fandom, just from a history and a legacy. And, you talked about Omaha, and getting to Omaha, and this, I hate this saying, is it's hard, but I mean, it's freaking hard. Like, Texas has been 38 times, and we are absolutely spoiled. LSU, how many times has LSU been to the College World Series?
It's not a ton, but they win it almost like every time they get there. It seems like
they've been 19 times and they've won 7, and they were runner up once. You look at some of the other schools that you think are just these massive powerhouses, and they're all under 20. They're under 15. They're under 10. And so getting the College World Series is not something that, you can just be uber talented and do. Like I said, you run into one team that's got a really good starter, you're down game 1. Now you're up against it, right? And not every team responds against that. And so it's always not about having the best players. Sometimes it's about the best mentality and the best matchups and what it looks like. So that's the reason I just, it's hard to always project Omaha because, outside of that, maybe that 2021 team when it was like Ivan Melendez and you just, there was power everywhere. They had 2 outstanding pitching guys leading the rotation. And they had young guys waiting in the wings. Every single year you go in and you've got question marks now. And it's, who's replacing this guy? Can we replace that production? And so when you lose 60% of your innings and your wins, yeah, I mean, it's hard to say Omaha, especially when you look around at the SEC and you go, well, there's 8 teams that are ranked higher than us. And you look at the ACC and there's 6 teams ranked higher than you and everyone else. So
thoughts, Mark?
Man, I just think the one thing about Texas baseball, right, is the expectations for the postseason are never going to change, right? And it doesn't matter what the hell happened the year before. Texas baseball fans expect to at least be in the running for the College World Series every season, right? And I don't want to ever live in a world where not meeting that expectation year after year is accepted, right? And love the guy to death. Some people, myself included, maybe think he got a bad deal, but I think you look at what happened to Coach Pierce, right? People just grew impatient of not winning games in Omaha, and I know for certain Schlossnagle understands those expectations, and from what I've seen, I think he's a person that probably embraces those expectations, and he's not afraid of that at all. But going back to your poll and some of your questions, every year you ask me what the Texas baseball team is going to do at the end of the year, I'm going to be telling you they're either going to Omaha or they're going to be playing, and for a chance to get to the College World Series. And I know both of y'all probably saw Joe Cook's interview that was posted earlier today where they were asking him the same question. And it's like, if you're not in the super regionals playing a 2 out of 3 game series to make it to Omaha, your season was a failure, period.
Yeah.
I don't care what year it was. I don't care what injuries you had. I don't care what conference you play in. If you're not in the super regionals at the University of Texas, at minimum, your season's a failure, period.
Yeah, that was pretty interesting. I had that down to talk about. That was an SEC Unfiltered interview with Joseph Cook from Inside Texas, and he just flat out said no reason Texas shouldn't be in the supers every year. He did throw a caveat in. What did he call it? I can't remember the exact wording. Basically, an epidemic of Tommy Johns on the pitching staff is the only reason that Texas shouldn't be in the supers every year. And I get that mentality. But I think I don't think you can pigeonhole that into every single season. So to me, and Harrison Gann, I saw him of SEC Unfiltered. He commented, I'm getting tired of seeing people say Omaha or bust. It's fine to say that as fans, but you can't say the season's a failure just because you don't get to Omaha. And I commented, I said, dude, don't be around Texas fans then, because that's kind of like the standard. Get to Omaha.
But I disagree with what you just said. If you're not playing for a chance to get to Omaha, at least bare minimum, your
That's
season
fair.
is a failure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. I think I'll say this. I think Jim Schlossnagle could have a successful season this year and not be in a super regional.
Losing in the regional round, I don't think so.
You got to look at the pieces. You got to look at what there is. There's so much unknown right now. I think if they're competitive in the SEC in year one, they have a showing in that SEC champion or in that SEC tournament. If they were to fall short in the regional and compete, now I'm not talking about you go and get your cocks knocked off. I'm saying you go and you compete and you just lose to better teams. Then I think that would be that could be seen as successful. We'll have to see. But yeah, and I get it. I get Texas fans are going to say, we want to go to Omaha, or we're super regional or bust, and most of them will say Omaha or bust. So, but it's pretty interesting. I think there's probably how many programs in college, but there's like 300 plus Division I baseball programs. I don't know the exact number. But there's probably 5, 6 that would have that type of mentality and could actually back it up. I mean, anybody could say that, but there's not many programs that are consistently that type of good. So it's strange that people would say doing something that's almost impossible consistently is the standard. Just from my perspective.
Yeah, but I think you have to take the numbers into account, right? Again, going back to Zach's point, we've been to Omaha twice as much as a program like LSU, right? And I remember not too long ago, man, when Augie was here, right? I made summer vacations every year expecting Texas to be in the College World Series, and they were there so frequently that even the off years where we'd stumble and didn't make it, we'd still go to Omaha to go party, right? Because we knew everybody there. We'd go hang out with all the other fans that we'd met. But the expectation was every June we're spending a week and a half in Omaha, whether we liked it or not. And I think Texas, just based on sheer numbers of appearances, is probably the only school who can really kind of have that mindset, right? Because you look at Texas, and a drought like 3 years feels like 20 years for Texas baseball fans. And that's kind of what we're going up against now, right? It's been 2 years, and 2022 felt like it was a decade ago. So
absolutely,
we're ready to get back there.
You mentioned Pierce and just the struggles he had. I mean, I think the one year they went and got knocked out by Mississippi State. They lost to Mississippi State in the opener in a 2-1 ball game, I believe. I think Antico hit a home run out to left field in that game because I was sitting out there. So I think that was our one run, and they played it a couple. Really tight game. There was an error, I believe, out in the outfield. Maybe not an error, but just a misplayed foul ball type of situation, I believe, in that game one. And I think in the other game against Mississippi State, there was something sort of similar. But point I'm trying to make, they were really close to advancing to the final. It was 2021. But the other 2 times that David Pierce took the Longhorns to Omaha, it was bad. They were just outmatched. They just did not look like they belonged there. They were 2 in barbecue, and they weren't really competitive in any of those 4 games. So I think, to somebody's point earlier, I can't remember if it was Zach or you, Mark, I think that is kind of what got David Pierce. It's one thing to get there, but then you got to win some games there, and you got to at least be competitive when you get there. And so
I think, there's a couple of things there. I mean, 2018, he got the horns there. And, we've had this argument multiple times up in the press box. Essentially, Cody Clemens played hero ball. I mean, legitimately,
absolutely.
We've had arguments whether who had the better season, Ivan Melendez or Cody Clemens, just because Melendez had pieces around him. Cody had nothing around him on that team for a large part of that season. I mean, they had players, but it was, there was nothing there offensively. But
he carried the team through the tournament.
The thing that with Pierce was it was all trajectory. If you looked at the recruiting and you started from 2021 on, you went from having 3 frontline starters, 4, to the next year having 2, to the next year just scraping by to get 1 guy to be a frontline starter. And then you look at the recruiting, it just, everyone was looking at the pieces going, hey, this puzzle's not fitting together. And not only that, but I'm not seeing the pieces on the board to even try to put in there anymore. And going into the SEC, it was like, this is not the place where you go to learn yourself. This is the place where you need to have a plan. You need to have a pipeline. You need to have someone that can drive it and not just manage it.
Fair enough. Let's talk some predictions for this weekend. What do we think? So me and Mark talked about it. I know you and I talked about it, Zach. We just don't win in Arlington. Is this the year we go into Arlington and finally get something done? Well, what are you guys thinking out of the 3 games we're going to play this weekend? What do you think we walk out of Arlington with our record being?
I think Texas goes 2-1 personally.
With a loss too?
I think they lose to Oklahoma State. I think they got too much offensive for an unknown Sunday starter at this point in the season. But I think they can beat Louisville just on pure power alone against Forbes. You know, Forbes is good, but I think the offense can get past him and get into that bullpen. And then against Ole Miss, if they're not going to see Hunter Elliott, Maddox is a solid pitcher, but again, this is a guy that this offense can get to, and they can get to that bullpen and, you know, take advantage of the freshman infielder and some of the defense they've got over there. So,
yeah, I think from my perspective, I'm right there with Zach. I want to see 2-1. You know, and you know, should things go worse than that, I think more importantly, I want to see competitive baseball. I don't want to see us go to Arlington and get blown out or have a game where we have 5 defensive errors or some bullshit like that. You know, I want to see a competitive baseball team. But I also know these are very good teams that we're playing, and it's never ideal to start the season with a tournament like this. I heard Schlossnagel say that this morning to Zach, and I know other coaches hate starting in these type of tournaments. I mean, ideally, it's your first series as the University of Texas baseball coach. You want to be playing Dartmouth in Austin,
right?
And win games 19-2. You don't want to be playing Ole Miss in Oklahoma State. So,
or Elon.
Yeah,
Elon.
I'd be very happy.
I was looking at the SEC schedule for this weekend. I was like, who the hell are these teams? I've never heard of half of these colleges. What are we doing in SEC? We're doing the same shit in baseball that y'all do in football. What is going on, SEC? Be better. Get in a tournament and play some tough. I will say this about the I think the competition looks pretty good this weekend. It's not what it is sometimes at this type of early season tournament. When you look at this Shriner Classic or the Minute Maid Classic thing, there's a lot of I mean, last year, who did we get? LSU right off the bat. Who else did we play in that one down in Minute Maid? It was a couple of really good teams that we played.
Was it so in Houston? Did we play Vanderbilt last year? Is that right? Or no, that was 2 years ago we played Vanderbilt.
No, so last year in Houston, there was number 3 LSU, then Texas State, and then Vanderbilt.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right. And we had the Vanderbilt game locked up in the 6th inning. We were up by like 11, and we lost that freaking game. I remember I was in my shop.
They had the Texas State game.
Yeah,
Texas tried to come back, and they just wasted all their energy. They came out firing on the next day, and then just that bullpen.
Yeah, but I mean, like through 6 innings, we couldn't miss. It was like we were hitting beach balls, and then we couldn't hit anything, and they start putting the ball all out of the park. That was a crazy game. That baseball team last year about gave me a heart attack, and so I'm looking for some consistency this weekend. Just we are what we're going to be, like talent wise and all that stuff. Let's just go be consistent, and then let's find out, you know, what we're not good at, maybe what we are good at. Let's start building on those things and getting a little better in those areas. MVP for the weekend. Who's your guy? Who are you looking to have a weekend?
Zach, you want to go first?
Yeah, I think for me it's Jalen Flores. I think Flo gets it going early. You know, Texas doesn't play well in big parks, but he's got the ability to hit, you know, not just for power, but to hit to all sides on the field. And I think he's able to get it going early and kind of set the tone for the team.
I'm gonna take a flyer this weekend on Gasparino. I'm really excited to see him play, man, and everything that I've heard from anybody who's been able to watch, you know, leading up to the season, they're really excited about him, and I'm looking for him to start the season out really hot. So I think he'll have a big weekend playing in a major league park. He'll be out there patrolling center field for us. So looking forward to seeing him. And I also think Schussler's going to have a big weekend as well. That guy's kind of turning himself into a bit of a hitting machine. So I'm hoping we'll see them come out hot starting this weekend.
Yeah, Gaspo is my guys. I was kind of thinking about it. I think a talented kid, obviously, and he's obviously put in some work in the offseason to change his body. I think a guy, kind of a dark horse type guy, if he does get some playing time because of Bellew being out with the illness stuff, which I didn't know about. But Farmer, I like Farmer. I think Tommy Farmer, I mean, he had a 2-hit game in the alumni game. He's changed his body. Hasn't really bulked up that much, but he looks different to me. He looks like he's been putting in some work in the weight room and stuff like that. So he's a guy that I think if he gets some playing time, we'll do some things over there. That's it for tonight's episode of the Bullpen, fellas. I appreciate you joining tonight. Please make sure you check out Zach Symm over at orangebloods.com. He's also a contributor at SEC Unfiltered. You can find him on X at Zach at the Dish. You can also find him at a lot of baseball games and Coach Slosh's office. If you need to find Zach, go to Coach Slosh's office. He'll be there. Also, we're here with Marc tonight, co-founder of Occupy Left Field. Find him on X at Occupy Left Field, and then make sure you find him this weekend out in left field at the ball. I'm going to call it the ballpark because that's what it should be called. It should not be called Globe Life Field. Find him at what is it called again? Texas
Live.
Texas Live. The little bitty bar at Texas Live, as I call it. Find Marc and his guys there. I might be there. We're gonna try, man. My name's Sean Redfearn of the Horn Takes podcast. I'm also a contributor over at SEC Unfiltered. You can find me on X at Sean_Redfearn. Follow the Horn Takes podcast on TikTok, Twitter, YouTube at Horn Takes. We're gonna be doing 2 or 3 shows a week. Bullpen, baseball, the cheap seats, from the cheap seats, football on Thursday nights. And then I do day drinking with my special lady friend that we dropped that one on Sunday. That one's not a live one, but it will be soon. She's doing a pretty good job. Make sure you guys watch the streams. I don't know if Brad Kellner or this optimistic Texas guy don't have season tickets. If you don't have season tickets and you had a chat, reach out to me. My email is horntakespodcast@gmail.com. You won some tickets. Nash, I don't know if you got tickets either, but you were blowing up the chat. So I feel like Nash has season tickets to everything in Texas. So maybe he's not the guy. Brad Kellner probably does not need tickets to the game. But if he does, I got tickets to the game. We're going to be giving away Texas baseball tickets all year. So follow the streams, jump into the chats, ask some questions, have some comments. If you do those things, you're going to win some tickets, and that's what everybody wants to do, is win some tickets, right? All right, fellas, I appreciate it. Everybody have a good night. Thanks for watching.
Welcome.
All righty.